Hey everybody. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to say hello and thank you so much for joining us today, both in person and those via live stream. I'm Melissa Milner, one of the Watson Military Fellows. And on behalf of the Watson Institute, the Office of Institutional Equity and Diversity here at Brown, and the Brown Military Fellows Program, we're grateful that you're joining us for what we expect will be a wonderful conversation with the 18th Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, Kaleth Wright, as he discusses the challenges and successes of leadership. Our agenda today will be remarks from Kaleth, followed by a question and answer session moderated by Dr. Juana Parillon, the Assistant Vice President of Institutional Equity and Diversity. We then welcome you to join us for refreshments after the event. Now I'm really excited to introduce one of my beloved leaders in the Air Force, so pardon the fangirl, Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, Kaleth Wright. As a 32-year veteran of the United States Air Force, Kaleth represented the highest enlisted level of leadership, where he served as a personal advisor to the senior leaders of the Air Force on issues regarding the welfare, readiness, morale, and proper use and progress of the force, which impacted nearly 600,000 airmen who served around the world. He enlisted in the U.S. Air Force in 1989 and deployed in support of Operations Desert Shield, Desert Storm, Enduring Freedom, and completed overseas tours in South Korea, Japan, Germany, and Alaska. In his retirement, he is an organizational leadership consultant and executive coach and a thought leader in diversity, resilience, and leadership. So without further ado, I'm excited to and very, very pleased to welcome Kaleth. And here's your other little clicker.
In a 2023 global leadership survey conducted by McKinsey Consulting, they found that 76% of employees that were surveyed felt like they will categorize their bosses, their immediate supervisors, as toxic, and they trust a stranger before they would trust their own boss. 75% said that their immediate supervisor was the most stressful part of their job. Only 1 in 5 reported that their immediate supervisor played a significant or any role in their personal development, helping them become the best version of themselves. 50% said the reason that they left a particular job was because of their immediate bosses. Only about 11% of organizations in this survey, included in this survey, believed that they had great leadership within the organization. And it's believed that only about 10% of leaders have natural leadership ability. I think there's a case to be made. This is maybe one of the reasons why that says, leadership is difficult. It can be challenging. The reason that I chose the title for this particular topic today is some of you're Brown University students, so you're probably familiar with Shakespeare and his play, King Henry IV, that was written in the late 1500s, and there is a part of the play where the king is about to go to war, and because of the heavy burden of responsibility that he has, he believed that if you're not in a position of leadership, you can sleep easy at night. But because of this heavy burden that he had as a king to take his country into war, he said, uneasy lies the head that wears the crown. And what he meant was, in his particular case, that he had trouble sleeping at night just because the burden of leadership was so heavy. Now, like we normally do as Americans, we kind of changed it to heavy is the head. It kind of sounds better. So you might hear a lot of people say, heavy is the head that wears the crown. I unknowingly and probably mistakenly used to use this term a lot. Whenever things got difficult and people would come to me and say, hey man, this is really hard, this is challenging, you know, I'm having trouble with resources, I'm having trouble with employees, or people who are not doing what they're supposed to do, I would just simply say, hey man, heavy is the head that wears the crown, right? Which in my case basically meant suck it up. Not a good representation of what this really meant. So I want to talk a little bit today about, you know, why leadership is difficult, but I don't think it's impossible. You'd be surprised how many people have this fear of getting it wrong. They have this fear of not being able to produce, not being able to meet whatever the requirements, the criteria that's been set forth by the people or by the people that they work for. But I can speak from personal experience. This is it's real. When you have, especially, and I don't purport to place the military above any other profession. There's lots of people who put their lives in danger, you know, on a regular basis. But especially when you're in a military environment, when you literally have the lives of the people that you serve in the palm of your hands at times. So it can be, you know, pretty difficult. Now, there's some other challenges that make leadership difficult. If we dug deeper into the survey, we would talk about the lack of representation from minorities and females in particular in key leadership positions. And so when, as many of you, and I'm looking at the makeup of this room, so there's probably some of you who have been in these situations and experienced the lack of opportunities for minorities and females and the challenges that come. Sometimes we call it a tax, right? Not a tax like attacking you, but a tax, right? In the black community, we call it the black tax, where when you are a minority, when you're a black person and you work in an organization where nobody looks like you, there's a tax that you have to pay every day to try to assimilate and belong and become a part of the organization that you serve. Women have the same tax. Now imagine showing up to work every day. Your job might be hard enough, and then you have this additional challenge, this additional tax of trying to assimilate and maybe be something that you're not, but you know you have to do this to be able to survive within this organization. Imagine the stress, and imagine, you know, you already have this in the military. We call it a rucksack. You see military people marching around. Kingsley knows about this. He's a resident Marine in the room. Well, Juana was a Marine as well, so they know about rucksacks and all the stuff that you put in. Imagine all of the other burdens that we will talk about, and then you have this additional burden of not having anyone in your organization that looks like you, not having anyone in the organization that you can relate to, not having anyone in the organization that can relate to you, that you can lean on for advice, for guidance. And sometimes it gets to a point where whether you're qualified to transition or to promote to a higher level or not, you almost associate any opportunities that you miss out on because of this status, because I'm a woman or because I'm a minority, in my case, a black person. So leadership is hard enough, and it's even harder, I'll be honest, when you fall into one of the underrepresented categories. Like she said, I joined the Air Force in 1989, and I'll skip most of all this stuff and just straight to the position that she introduced me as. I was a Chief Master Sergeant in the Air Force, and I was only the second person to hold, African-American person to hold this position in the history of the Air Force. Air Force began in 1947 officially. We were part of the Army for a while, but we broke off and became our own separate service in 1947. So the last time we had an African-American person to serve in this position was 1974 to 1978. I was an unlikely candidate. I don't think my boss or anybody in the Air Force really knew who I was. As a matter of fact, I'm almost certain that, are you guys familiar with the Rooney Rule in professional football? So there's a rule in professional football that relates to coaches that says that you have to interview, you don't have to hire, but you have to at least interview one minority coach when in your search for a coach. In my mind, I was the Rooney Rule for this position in the Air Force. However, I'm a competitor, and I said, hey, you put me in the game, coach, I'm taking a shot. And anyway, so I get hired. I'm the second African American. I'm an unlikely candidate, and man, you talk about pressure. The pressure of performing, the burden of, being in this position and not letting, not just the people who look like me down, but also proving the people wrong who thought that I shouldn't be in the position. So I got busy. I got to work. 3.5 years I was in this position. I traveled on average 290 days a year. I'll talk a little bit later about how I wore my body down. I wore my mind down. I wore my spirit down. I did, not the job, I did, because I felt so much pressure. I had so much in this rucksack that I was carrying to perform for the people that put me in this position, the people that looked up to me in this position. Some of the things that I'll talk to you about today, I wish I would have done better, but I think it's equally important to talk about successes, to talk about mistakes and challenges than it is to talk about, some successes. And so I think one of the very first and most important things that you should think about from a leadership perspective when you have a burden like this is you have a responsibility to lead yourself first. We spend a lot of time talking about, well, what about the people that we serve, and what if I don't have great employees, and what about if my teammates, and what if I don't have these resources? You have a lot of responsibilities, but I think your first and primary responsibility is to lead yourself first. And that means understanding who you are, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and there are multiple ways that you can do this. Now, I don't expect, especially those of you who are in student status or maybe getting ready to start your first career, to go out and hire some executive coach and have a battery of assessments and do a 360 and have somebody, lay out to you exactly, hey, here are the challenges that you have, here are the strengths that you have. But there's other informal ways that you can ask for feedback from your peers, from your faculty, from the people that you serve with and that you work with. But I feel like it's, many of our challenges, and I'll speak for myself in particular, many of the challenges that I had, they began with me. And until I accepted, someone once asked me, actually people ask me, relatively often, hey, what was the biggest burden that you had to overcome? And it was myself. I had to learn how to get out of my own way. I didn't spend enough time reflecting and understanding what my challenges were and what my weaknesses were. And I had some real challenges with, believe it or not, with relationships and understanding the importance of professional relationships. Relationships are really easy when you like people, when you get along great. You're like, well, I'm great at relationships. But they're really difficult when you don't. And, I had an instance that I had a lady that I worked for. I didn't particularly like her. She didn't particularly like me. She attempted to give me some much needed counseling. When I look back on it, the counseling she was trying to give me, I needed. And my response to this counseling, because it was about how I was treating another individual, my response to this counseling was, thank you, but I reject this counseling. I don't need your effing advice. Anybody ever said that to your boss? Well, you have. Okay. Most people haven't. And it didn't turn out well, and it set me back, quite a bit, about 3 years in my career. And it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me, though, because it forced me to do some reflection, to look in the mirror, to better understand who I was, the challenge that I had with relationships, and to have time to work on it. Now, during this 3-year period, I wasn't saying this is the best thing that ever happened to me. I'm glad I cursed this person out and got set back so much. But when I look back on it, I obviously eventually got promoted, and I looked back and I thought that was something that was much needed for me. And so it just really helped me understand the importance and the power of leading myself. I'm a little bit torn on this idea of motivation. You guys probably know Nick Vujicic and maybe you don't, but Eric Thomas. So probably two of the more famous motivational speakers, you know, outside of Tony Robbins and Les Brown and some of those folks, maybe some of the newer generation of, you know, motivational speakers. And I've actually listened to both of them, and I've used them at times for, you know, to help me get motivated to take on the burden and the responsibilities of being a leader at this highest level. And so I don't knock anybody that does, but what I really think is that, you know, this is short-lived, right? You can have all of the motivation and the motivational speeches and the motivational videos. I've used all that stuff and I still use it, but you have to find a sense of internal motivation. As a matter of fact, I think motivation in general is pretty fleeting. Here's what I would prefer that you to work on: developing good habits, right? Developing good habits where you don't need some jolt of energy. You don't need some external person that's going to say to you, hey, you can do it, you know, just get up and recite quotes and all that good stuff. I think there is a place for it, and we all need it sometimes. Just like we all need a cup of coffee, or we need a Red Bull, or for me, a 5-hour energy to help us get through, you know, whatever thing that we're trying to get through. And one of the most important habits that I think you can develop as a leader, especially when you have a high level of responsibility and a lot of a heavy burden to carry, is, man, you have to win your morning. Now, this might be easy for, you know, most of you in academia, but I tell you, it's not that easy for a lot of leaders out in corporate America, in healthcare, in the nonprofit sector, and whatnot. And I'll tell you, the biggest factor that keeps people from winning their mornings, what do you think it is? Well, that's one. Lack of sleep. Say it again. Snooze button. The snooze button? No. Trouble getting out of the bed. Email. If you can control your email, you can control your life. Email is the devil, I'm telling you. So here's how a typical executive operates. And these are individuals that I coach, individuals that I've worked for, individuals that I work with. They may or may have a plan for today. They may have, you know, in the evenings or early in the morning, they write out, hey, here are the 3 or 5 goals that I want to accomplish today. I'm just going to wake up and get my coffee, and then I'm going to check my email real quick. And then I'll get to those priorities. And what do you think happens? You get trapped. You get trapped in, hey, can you send me a quick update on this? Yep, no problem. Hey, I have a question for you. Could you give me a call? Yep, no problem. And you get to working on everybody else's priorities, and now it's mid-morning to late morning, and you haven't done a thing on the important things that you worked on. So once I started winning my mornings, this is how my mornings go to this day. In the evening, sometime the day prior, I decide these are the 3 most important things that I need to get done tomorrow. And when I wake up, I have my coffee, I do my meditation, I exercise, and then I get busy on those 3 things. I will not open my email until after I'm done. Now, that's easy for me now. I work for myself. I don't really have anybody to answer to. All I'm really looking to see is when my Amazon packages are showing up and whatnot. But even when I was in this position, I did the same thing. I stopped allowing email to manage my day. Now, you also might be saying, I don't know if my boss would be okay with me not checking email until 9:30 or 10 o'clock. If you went to your boss and you said, hey, this is how my day goes. I wake up, I do my self-care, and then I get busy on the 3 most important things that I need to do for you in this organization. I don't check my email until about 10 o'clock. So if you need something prior to that, just send me a text message or give me a call and I'll jump right on it. Many of you in the room are bosses and you have people that work for you. How would that go over with you? Yeah. So it's actually not as hard as you think. I think if you can win your morning, you can win your day. If you get behind in the morning, it tends to ruin the rest of the day. As leaders, we spend a lot of time on time management, messing around with the calendar, trying to figure out, when to have the right appointments and when to create time for ourselves. We spend very little time mastering our energy. Energy management is much more important as a senior leader than time management. Because even if you can create the right time slots and the right time to do all the things that you want to, if you don't have the energy when you need it, it's going to be challenging. It's going to be challenging. I can't tell you the amount of time and effort that I spent traveling in meetings and conferences, speaking, teaching, and so on and so forth. And in my first year, at the end of the year, I got sick because I wasn't eating right, I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't working out, I wasn't taking care of myself on any level. And I would like to believe that I was really killing it, but honestly, I wasn't. I wasn't being effective in my role because I wasn't mastering my energy. And here's the other thing: the level of popularity that I encountered when I became the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force. And you don't have to be popular, but typically when you're responsible, this is what you hear. Hey boss, you got a minute? Hey boss, you got a second? Hey boss, can I talk to you about this? Hey sir, hey ma'am, hey. And people are going to draw from you. They want your time, they want your effort, they want your energy, and you want to give it to them. But you can't pour from an empty cup. And so if you want to take care of the people, you got to take care of yourself. I spent so much time taking care of, at the time we had almost 600,000 airmen in the Air Force. And in my mind, I was taking care of every single one of them. Every program, every process, every opportunity I had to take care of them, I took it. I took care of every single one except one. Guess which one? Yeah, myself. When's the last time any of you been on an airplane? 2 weeks ago. So you remember the flight attendant during the briefing? Do you listen during the briefing? Kind of, yeah. That was just like me, right? I don't really listen. But when the flight attendant says, hey, if this plane loses oxygen, the mask will drop down and you should do what? You should put your mask on first. And she doesn't go on to say, because if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of your neighbor or whoever sitting next to you. But that's what it implies. And I think from a leadership perspective, you have to put your mask on first. And you do that by mastering your energy and not worrying so much about time. This goes into that same concept of leading yourself. I used to say leaders are readers. Now I'm a huge podcast person. I actually learn a lot about leadership from TikTok and Instagram. I was just talking to Denver about that. But I think it's important from a leadership standpoint that you engage in learning. And I used to my reading was all over the place, right? I would just kind of read just about anything. If you put me in an airport, I'm more than likely to go into one of the stores and buy a book about whatever might interest me. But at some point, I had a coach a leadership coach, who he asked me, what are you working on? And at the time I was working on resilience for the Air Force, and I was working on leadership development. And he mentioned, hey, you should limit your reading to the things that you're actually working on right now that might be helpful to you to hone in, and you can make improvements and grow some depth in that particular area. So big part of helping with the burden of leadership is continuing to be a learner. And these are some of my favorite podcasts and some of my all-time favorite books. One that I would recommend, okay, I was looking for the pointer, but one I would recommend is for just about anybody is Malcolm Gladwell's Talking to Strangers, the audiobook, if you've actually never read it. It is a great read about how we don't understand people that don't look like us and some of the mistakes that we typically make. But so when I was a Chief Master Sergeant in the Air Force, this was most of my team. One of my favorite African proverbs: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I just think it's important that everybody should have a squad. Most of the time I hear leaders say that it's lonely at the top. How many of you have heard that, and how many of you think that that's true? How many, well, let me ask the more important question. How many of you think it is true? Why, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, while you should appreciate and take into consideration the advice and considerations of the others, at the end of the day, the decision lands with you.
Yeah. So the decision does typically land with the leaders, but I tell you what, if you have a squad, if you put a team around you, if you put a group of people around you that can support you, that can help you think through difficult decisions, that will give you some level of confidence that you're doing the right thing and that you won't ever get to be 100%. If you put people around you that you can lean on when things are going bad, people around you that you can cheer with when things are going good, your leadership experience will be much, much better. You'll be surprised at how much lighter that pack gets, how much lighter that burden becomes when you have people that go through these challenges with you. I can't speak enough about the individuals in this photo. I had already retired at this time, and the ones that are still in uniform, 3 of them are still in, the 3 on the other end, and so we stopped working together 4 years ago, but we still get together for holidays. We still get together whenever. Most of us still live in the DMV. A few of them live in San Antonio, but I would not have gotten to where I was, and I certainly wouldn't have been successful without having a great team around me. You don't have to do it alone. Again, the burden is heavy enough. Don't try to take it on all by yourself. One thing that we as leaders are not good at all is asking for help. We suffer in silence, and then it typically comes out in drinking and angry and aggressive behavior, sometimes drugs. And there's also, a myth. Well, I don't know if you call it a myth, but in some instances, it is a myth that if you're asked for help, then you're somehow weak and you're not worthy of being our leader. Sometimes it's embarrassing to admit that, hey, I'm struggling, I'm depressed, I'm having some real challenges with the operations or whatever happens in this organization. But what I would encourage you, and this is especially for the young people in the room, start now thinking about the importance and the power of therapy, of counseling, of asking for help when you need it. It doesn't make you weak. As a matter of fact, I think today, now, I don't doubt that there are organizations that might see this as a weakness. But I think today many great leaders see this as a strength. Someone who says, hey, I'm struggling over here and I need to go see someone. I think this is one of the more important steps that you can take as a leader, again, to relieve the heavy burden of leadership. Slow down, smell the roses, enjoy life. I wish I would have done this when I was in the Air Force, but I mean, I just spent so much time trying to serve the people. I didn't take any vacations. I didn't really do anything with my family, which I'm going to talk about here in a second. Sometimes you just got to slow down, smell the roses, and enjoy life. I know Kingsley is writing a paper on, in the military, we have this, you know, you're granted leave, and if you don't use, you're granted 30 days of basically vacation a year, but if you don't use it by a certain point, then you actually lose it. And so he's doing a study on how much vacation time military people lose, and it is an extraordinary amount of time that people lose just because they don't take vacations. I would suggest that very little of it is because they're not allowed to, because they can't. Most of it is because people feel this sense of importance. I'm the leader. I have to be here. If I don't make things happen, then they won't. Again, I got sick at the end of my first year as a Chief Master Sergeant in the Air Force. I was out for 5 days. And you know how it impacted the Air Force? Not at all. Just kept right on going. Just like I got hit by a bus. You know, everything kept right on happening. And that was a huge call for me. And even with that, I still didn't take the time to slow down and enjoy life, enjoy the time with my family and friends while I was in this position. So don't work yourself into a stupor. Take time off when you need it. The hard right versus the easy wrong. This is not a political hard right. This refers to the hard right versus the easy wrong. I want to tell you a story about a challenge. One of the more challenging and burdensome things that you will face as a leader is when you have to fire someone, when you have to end someone's career, and when you have to affect their livelihood. When I was in the military, there really isn't a such thing as being fired, right? You could lose your job, but you just go move somewhere else to another section, and you still get paid. You still have all of your benefits. Well, you all know out here in the real world, as we call it sometimes, when you fire someone, they no longer get paid. They no longer have benefits and whatnot. So I had a young lady that worked for me, and she was very, very toxic. But she was a great, she managed up really well. She was really toxic and really rude to her peers and her subordinates. But whenever I would talk to her, she would be the most pleasant. It was like one of the most pleasant experiences that I ever had. And so I was a little bit in denial. She was the only black executive on my staff. So that kind of played into it. And she was a little bit difficult. And so I said to myself, you know, if I fire her, this is going to be difficult. We're probably going to have to go to court. Like, I don't really feel like going through that. So I just kept putting it off and putting it off until one day my staff came to me, the rest of the staff. She was our chief marketing officer, the COO, the CFO. I was the CEO of this nonprofit at the time. They all came and said, hey, look, it's either her or all of us are leaving. Now, this was after 32 years of serving in all of these high-level positions. I'm currently a CEO of a multi-million-dollar nonprofit organization, and I lacked the courage to do what was the hard right thing, and I opted to do the easy wrong thing, which was to allow her to continue. And it really wasn't, it's not like I woke up, had an epiphany, and said, okay, yeah, this is going far enough. It really was, the people came to me and said, you know, if you don't fire her, then we're all gonna quit. And then I took the step. You'll be faced with many, many difficult decisions in your careers as leaders, and I think it's imperative that, you know, you understand the hard right from the easy wrong and be willing to have the courage to make difficult decisions. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't think them through. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't have compassion for the people that you serve with, but there will be times when you will have to make difficult decisions. James Baldwin, one of my favorite authors and activists, said, sometimes You have to sing off key in order for your voice to be heard. George Floyd was murdered in 2020. The military in general was fairly quiet, not fairly quiet, was really, really quiet. Nobody spoke about it. Nobody said anything about it, from the Secretary of Defense all the way down to all of the services. I felt some kind of way about it, particularly being African-American male. So I woke up one morning and I wrote an op-ed, and it was titled, "Who Am I?" Subtitle was, "I am a black man who happens to be the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force." And I wrote some relatively strong thoughts and feelings about what happened to George Floyd, what had been happening in this country, what had been happening in the military, particularly in the Air Force in my case. And I sent it to my boss, and he said, "Yep, sounds good. I don't have a problem with it." And then about 30 minutes before it was supposed to be released, the Secretary of Defense, who is the most senior person in the United States military, says to me, well, he didn't say to me, somebody came in my office and said, "Hey, the Secretary doesn't want anybody talking about George Floyd." So I'm about 3 or 4 months from retiring. I got a pretty good reputation with the people. I could probably get fired if I push this letter out. I thought about it for about 17 seconds, and I said, "Yeah, go ahead and publish it." And I received some backlash, not from the Secretary of Defense, but from some people who didn't agree with my stance or my statements or the way that it was worded, and so on and so forth. But it was also, I got a lot of support. It kicked off the conversation. Many of the senior leaders in the military started having conversations about George Floyd and racial tensions in the United States and within the military. Now, I don't think you have to put your career on the line. I don't think you have to defy the orders of the president of Brown University or your faculty, you know, all the time. But there will come times as leaders when you need to sing off key, when you'll have to say what needs to be said. It doesn't matter how unpopular it might be. So I think you have to be prepared to talk about things and to address issues that are hard, going back to the hard right, and the things that nobody else might be talking about. I was the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, and I was very methodical, I was very intentional, I was very purposeful about every single thing that I did, about every engagement, about every conference, about every program, about every process. I was very, very methodical. Intentionality, purpose, that's how I was as a leader. But I left my marriage and I left my family situation just to chance. We'll just figure it out. So I'm in this high-level, senior-level position. I'm beloved by the Air Force. I had a silly nickname and everything. I was a hero in the streets. People loved me. I was a zero at home. The time and effort that I would put into planning a conference or preparing for a presentation, if my wife would ask me, "Hey, would you plan us a date for the weekend?" Like, "Man, you know I'm tired. I don't feel like, I've been working all day. I've been out here in the streets. I've been traveling all this time. Why don't you do it?" I would come home in the evenings from long days of speaking or being in the Pentagon and working on programs and processes. I walk in the door. Some men might be able to relate to this. My wife would say, "Hey, baby, how was your day?" "Fine." "What'd you do?" "Spoke to the students at Brown and some of the staff." What'd you talk about? Leadership, how hard it is. Well, what did they ask? Hey, listen, I already lived this day once. I don't want to live it again. Just give me a minute. Let me put my feet up, watch Sports Center, drink me a beer, give me something to eat, and maybe we can talk after that. I expected her to understand this heavy burden that I was carrying, even though of all the things in my pack, you know, was it in the rucksack? My wife. So I lost my family while I was in this position, while I was, you know, all the stuff she read, all of the great things, all of the, my wife said, I've had enough. And now, we became great friends. We're still great friends to this day. We have 2 German-bred Yorkies that are about this big that we still kind of share custody. So I say to any leader, any aspiring leader, if I look at your calendar and I see this meeting, this class, this program, this project, go here, work on that, work on this appraisal, blah, blah, blah. I love to see an equal amount of date night, of soccer game with the kid, pick up flowers for the wife, cook dinner this weekend because I know I'm going to be gone, make sure that the things that she needs me to do are done. Understand her or his love language. You know, me, I'm like, hey, I'll just buy a bunch of purses and flowers and she should be all right. I don't know why you're complaining. Like, got a Louis. Like, what's the problem? But she wanted time. She wanted effort. She wanted my energy, all the energy that I was giving to these 600,000 people. There's no such thing as work-life balance. You won't ever be able to give your significant other the amount of time that you have to give to your profession. It just typically doesn't work that way. Even if you're an entrepreneur and you work from home, there's generally more time that you will spend working than you will be able to give to your spouse or significant other or your children. But you can give the same amount of energy. And you can give the same amount of effort. And you can give the same amount of intentionality and purpose to the people that you love. You'll be shocked how many senior leaders are like me. They look happy because when what we decided was my time wasn't finished. I was still the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force. We got separated. But we said, hey, let's just keep pretending like we're together. We'll keep showing up at stuff, smiling, taking pictures, and enjoying life. And you keep buying me these Louis, keep me happy. And you'd be surprised at how many senior leaders are just like us. They appear to be happy. They appear to be doing all the right things, and the person is just like me, so invested in the job. That burden is so heavy that they're neglecting significant other, children, goldfish, whatever it is you have that you love. So think about how you create harmony in your life. Again, James Baldwin, one of my favorites. That burden is heavy, but I think if you recognize it, if you face it, if you employ, some intentionality and some purpose in your personal and professional life, it won't be lonely at the top. You won't drive yourself into an emotional, black hole, and you won't ruin your family. Juana, what questions do you have for me? We can sit down if you like.
It's your preference. I can stand right here.
Okay, then I'll stand over here.
Oh, I figured that much. Does this work? Okay. It's not a smell thing, to be clear. Okay. Wow. Well, first of all, thank you so much for your vulnerability. It's really easy for us, even I, as I'm sitting there, to judge and critique in my head the decisions you made or didn't make. And you just gave us 31 years of experience in 45. So I think that takes a lot of courage, and I just want to take a moment to lift that up and to thank you for that, right? Am I the only one? Okay, good. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna start off with a couple of easy questions, and then we're gonna float around. If you would like to ask a question, just raise your hand, and we'll get a mic to you. But I have a ton, so if you're quiet, I'm gonna keep talking. We did decide that we're going to extend the event. Originally, it was till 5, but we'll stay till 5:15, or as long as you need to ask questions. Is that okay, Kaleth?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah.
See, I'm not the only one that's jumpy, okay?
Yeah.
Just to be clear. Now, can we start with this? You said a silly name was given to you. Does everybody know what that is? I just want to say it out loud. Enlisted Jesus. I mean, when you talk about being beloved, that is probably the highest accolade that I know of in many religions to get. Why do you think you were so beloved?
I think I was so beloved because I took a very active role in communicating, engaging with the people, particularly the youngest people in the Air Force, listening to what they had to say and then immediately making changes that they wanted to see and doing things in their best interest, which is how the name came along. So very early in my tenure, I made changes to three programs that had a huge impact on young enlisted people. Some guy created a meme. I actually think it was Moses, because it was a figure, a biblical figure with the tablets, and it had, this guy changed 1 to A, B, and C. Basically, he's enlisted Jesus, but it had my head superimposed on it, and then it just kind of caught on. And
there is a whole Facebook page, to be clear. Have you seen it? Okay, never mind. Moving on. Moving on. So, you mentioned your journey in this role in particular, and you shared that you were one of 2 Black men to have ever served in this role. And you talked about some of the challenges that went along with that. But I'm really intrigued and interested to understand what type of strategies you implemented to bring those naysayers along with you, because in that 600,000 figure data point that you gave us of all the Air Force personnel that you had to lead, I'm sure they weren't all, right, like looking forward to your leadership. How did you bring them along?
Yeah, so I put my head down and I got busy. I didn't think much about what people thought and if they thought that I was the right person or not. I knew one person thought I was the right person. That was the guy who hired me, the chief of staff. And so that was really my only concern. And then I just, like I said, I put my head down and I did what I do best, what I had been doing prior to that point. I started working on the programs. I went out, and why I spent so much time on the road is because I went out and I did multiple focus groups, small groups like this, even smaller than this, where I would have lunch or breakfast or, sit in auditoriums and just listen to the people tell me, hey, this is what's bugging us. These are the things that we would like to see changed. And then we started changing them. I think one of my strengths is as a galvanizer, as a connector. So we had some splits in the Air Force between various. The Air Force really is a kind of a concoction of subcultures. So you have the flying community, you have the support community, you have the medical community, and they all have some opinion about each other. So I was able to bring some of those communities together to let particularly some of the folks in support community, which is where I came from, medical/support, that, hey, you're valued as well. You have a voice. I brought a lot of people to the table that didn't previously have a voice. And, again, really, I just got busy with the work of the position. And then people started saying, oh, wow, this guy's not too bad. We didn't think he could do it. But and so I think that's probably a good idea for it. If you spend too much time worrying about what people think and what people are going to say and how people see you and feel about you, it can really detract from, I think, the mission that you might have.
Wow, that's really incredible. Now I'm going to ask this question, but please start jotting yours down, thinking about it. I want to see some hands, okay? I can't be the only one. That's a lot of pressure right now, right? Y'all need to get live. I can't be the only vibe in this room, okay? So I want to shift gears for a second. You talked about 2020, May in particular. You talked about sharing a letter or a post at the time, and that post went viral. And you did it against the wishes of the most senior person, right? I wanted to ask you, what moved you in that moment? You said it took me 17 seconds, and I said push the button and send it. What moved you beyond the fear, if you had any, to make that decision? Or because you said, I was 3 to 4 months from retiring, everybody was on board with me. They knew who I was and what I was about. And yet and still you made that difficult decision, courageous decision, to push through.
Yeah. So I think what moved me to push the button was the same thing that moved me to actually write down my thoughts. So when after George Floyd got killed, I was angry. A lot of my friends were angry, and we started a Zoom chat. It was during COVID, right? So we weren't all together. We started a Zoom chat, and we would talk about. It started off with us just really complaining, with just being angry, like this is messed up, this country, blah 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 blah. And then at some point I said, hey, let's transition. Let's take some of this energy and figure out what we can do. And so we had planned to create a nonprofit organization with the purpose of bridging the gap between law enforcement and young African-American males in the communities where we resided. But in the meantime, what was happening is young black men in the military were texting me, emailing, Facebook, any platform you can think of, saying, hey, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't know how to feel. Nobody at my job is talking about this. The Air Force is not saying anything. What are your thoughts? How do you feel? They were just peppering me with these thoughts and ideas. And I said to myself, heavy is the head that wears the crown. Like, you can't accept all of the accolades and all of the great things about this position. And when things are going tough, run away from it. So I woke up one morning and I just started writing. And I wrote and wrote and wrote. And I sent it to my team first, that team of folks. And I said, hey, this is exactly what I want to say. This is exactly how I want to say it. I used the word black. I used the word white. Every word and every phrase is exactly the way I want it written. You can change spelling and grammar, but I don't want anything else changed. And so once I committed myself to, like, this is the message that I think the people need to hear, the president, the Secretary of Defense, I don't think anybody, unless they could have virtually or physically got in my and everybody else's email who had it, I don't think anything would have stopped. And I was okay, because again, I was at the end of my career. I was okay with, if I would have got fired, I would have been perfectly fine with that. Like I said, you can't really get fired in the military anyway. I would have still got paid. I would have still got my retirement.
But you did it. So that's courageous and much appreciated. It's almost like you took the lead and you set the tone and perhaps inspired a lot of other people to speak out too during a really, really tumultuous time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could I inject a little bit? And the other thing you did not mention that. For all those years, you built your reputation, your integrity. So you're confident.
about yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and you do it, and also you fulfill leadership, like,
Yeah.
and all those people ask you to speak it up.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yes.
I have a question. I don't know if we're moving to like this.
Please, yes.
Hi, my name is Rachel. I'm a master's in public affairs candidate or student, and I was more so curious. In a lot of our classes, we talk about leadership and making decisions, but more so the implementation part. And making a decision is sometimes easier than actually implementing it. And as a leader, you probably made a lot of decisions in regards to the Air Force. How did you see those decisions to completion? How did you see the implementation process? Were there check marks that you made yourself to really go back and recognize, like, okay, like this decision has been implemented to the best of its ability?
Yeah, it varied, right? So one of my strengths is coming up with decisions. One of my weaknesses is execution and seeing things through. And I understand and readily admit that. The decisions that I made or I was involved with that I felt were really important, I think I had a vested interest in making sure people on that team, I had the right people who had the execution and the finishing gene, and that were kind of dogged about seeing things through the finish line. There were other things that either weren't that important to me or fell off my radar because I had so many other things that didn't have the right people that could implement the decision, and they just got lost in the universe. And so I think for me, especially during that time, late in my career, it was all about, man, you got to make sure you have the right people on the team that can implement these things. And then having a process in place where you have, weekly, quarterly, monthly checks progress checks to have this. And then, frankly, and this is not something that, you have to worry about now, but having we call it a chief of staff or somebody that could keep important things in the forefront. Because when I was a chief master sergeant in the Air Force, it was 100,000 issues every day. It was a different issue. You kind of get pulled, all over the place. And I had a young lady who served as a chief of staff that kept, hey, all of that is great, but these are the 3 important things that you said you want to work on that fall into the category of resilience and training and development, the things that you're concerned about. So prioritization, I think, is a big part of it also.
Great question. Any other questions?
Thank you for being here. Question regarding your leadership. So I was in the Navy for a while, and a lot of frustrations with the junior enlisted is feeling like the senior enlisted were no longer connected to their roots, or not really like listening to them once they get past a certain point. How are you able to connect with that and show the junior enlisted, like through your leadership styles or what have you, that you are still listening? Because if you were so beloved, you must have had the attention and the approval of the E1 through E4 as well. So how did you go about that?
Yeah, so a couple of things. One, I never forgot how it felt to be an E1 and E4 and not be listened to. And so I spent a lot of time when I would typically go to a base. I would set aside time for the chiefs and the senior folks, but I would set aside more time. I would always have breakfast with E1 through E4, and giving them an opportunity to give me ideas. One of the things I did, I was telling the team earlier, I didn't know what Reddit was. But I got on Reddit one time and I was like, holy crap, this is where people say how they really feel. This is like, these people got something to say. Like, I want to talk to them because they tell it like it is. And so I invited what we considered the top 10 most negative, most opinionated Redditors, Air Force Redditors. We paid for them to come to the Pentagon. They came to my office. We sat down for a couple of hours and had a great conversation. They gave me a lot of feedback about what they liked and didn't like and wanted to see. And I put a lot of their ideas into practice. And whenever we would have a focus group, we call them tiger teams in the Air Force, where, you know, you want to work on some project, we get a bunch of people together. I would invite one of the young people who are out in the Air Force and living all of this stuff. Hey, be a part of this team. Give us some vector checks. And then I think I did, me and the team, we did a good job of utilizing social media, right? Now, a lot of senior leaders didn't really care for this, but you could just like email me or send me a Facebook message directly, right? E1, E4, E whatever. And I'd respond. I might call you. I might FaceTime you and be like, all right, now what is this you're talking about? And, you know, I didn't have a lot of novel ideas that I just woke up and thinking, hey, we should change this. It was, hey, this is what the people are saying. This is what the people want. This is what they don't want. I wasn't reckless in just saying, hey, you know, they said they want this, so let's just do it. You know, we would do the research pretty quickly. Hey, let's do the research. Let's figure out if what they're saying makes sense. Let's implement it. And then I would typically give that person a call and say, hey, thanks for the idea. It'll be changed starting on this day. You know, I'll keep you posted if anything else happens. And you know, it's been relatively easy for me to communicate with young people, the youngest people in the military. You know, just my style. Again, I never forgot when I was young and always complaining about something and wanted somebody to listen, and nobody would. So
what I heard was the ultimate way to bring in the naysayers is feed them and listen to them.
Feed them and listen to them.
All right, taking notes.
Thank you for that insight. I'll take that with me in my policy advocacy at the State House.
Yeah.
But my name is Elijah McLean. I'm a student in the Urban Education Policy, the master's program. And I had a question. I know you spoke, you know, vaguely, broadly about the work that you've done. Could you potentially, you know, share with us 3 victories or accomplishments that you're most proud of in the 32 years? And whether it's, you know, in your final position as Chief Master Sergeant or anywhere along the line, if you were to say, like, you know, have like 3, you know, tell-all stories or like accomplishments, things that you're most proud of in your time serving.
Oh. So I feel like I accomplished a lot of stuff. We improved a lot of programs and the lives of a lot of young service members, but I'm not necessarily that proud of any of that, to be honest. What I'm most proud of, and are the number of young people that I had an opportunity to serve with, that I served as a mentor or a supervisor or a coach for, that particularly the ones who started off bad like me. I had a really rocky start to my career. We didn't talk about that. And now have become Chief Master Sergeants themselves, got commissioned as officers themselves. When they have kids, they send me pictures. When they get promoted, they send me invitations when anything good happens in their lives. And they, you know, many of them I consider my Air Force sons and daughters. That's really what I'm most proud of, is the number of people that I had an opportunity to touch the lives of, and the fact that they still reach out to me. They still call and text and email, and they still will answer my call if I'm in their city and say, I'm here, let's meet at First Watch or IHOP or whatever, and catch up. Yeah, that's what makes me proud. And there's more than 3, you know, there's literally hundreds, I think, of people that I've been able to have an impact on, and they had, you know, some level of impact on me as well.
So in that response, you talked about mentorship. And earlier today, we had a conversation about the difference between having a mentor and having a sponsor.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about the importance of having both and not just one?
Yeah, so I think the biggest difference, you know, many of us have mentors and have had mentor, somebody that you could look to for advice, for guidance, that could help you with making the right decisions, coming to Brown University, or do more of this, do less of that, that will look over your records and tell you how well you're doing, that will be there when you're going through challenging times, and I think we all need that. But a sponsor is someone that when the doors close and there's an opportunity for you to promote, for you to to take advantage of an opportunity, a sponsor is someone who will actually speak on your behalf. And it's great to have, I think, again, we all should have mentors. We all should have people in our corners. But, man, it's even better when you have someone that actually speaks on your behalf to help you navigate through your career. And I think I didn't have a sponsor for many years, and sometimes you have a sponsor and you don't know it. You probably have sponsors right now, right? You probably have faculty that speak on your behalf behind closed doors and say, this is one of the best students that I ever had. This student will make a great, whatever, and I'm sending you his or her name and resume or CV or whatever it is, and you never know it. And that's really, that speaks to you and your character and, how your level of professionalism and hard work and so on and so forth. So it's not like we all get assigned sponsors. Sometimes you actually know it. Sometimes somebody says, hey, you're doing a great job, man. I'm going to send your name over to this person. I'm going to make sure you get this opportunity. Sometimes they just do it. And you think like, wow, I'm good, man. Somebody just called me out of the blue and said that, I got accepted into the grad program or, whatever it is. But so I think, both are important. Having a sponsor is one of the keys to your ultimate success. Indeed. Now, I will admit that is a form of bias, right? So you do have to be careful because, just because you have a sponsor, it doesn't mean that you actually deserve the opportunities that always come to you.
That's a whole nother hour now.
Whole nother hour. We ain't got that kind of time. Yeah.
Any other questions? We have a question in the back, and then one in the front.
Yeah.
Thanks for your great talk. Thanks for your talk. It occurred to me the commonality between the military and education was that we're both dealing with young people. And this summer I was leading a summer intensive. I have 18-year-old boys, girls, everybody. And it's pretty rigorous and intense. And sometimes when someone's struggling, they try to hide it. They try to maintain the good front, the bravado, and that kind of thing. And then, they could have extra help, but I have to get it to them. And how do I broach that conversation? How do you first bring it up with someone when you're bringing an issue like that? Because it's not their preference. They don't want to talk.
Yeah, so I think, much of it might be based on the relationship you have with them prior to that, right? If there's a level of trust that you've built up, if they feel like they can be vulnerable and open up to you, then it obviously becomes, much easier. I've had, young people that I serve with that are struggling that I could just say, hey man, you screwing up. You seem like you're really struggling with this job or this school or what have you. Tell me what's happening and how can we fix it. And then there are others where I didn't have that type of relationship, and I, employed somewhat of a coaching mentality. Hey, how's it going? It seems like you might be struggling a little bit. Is there anything happening at home or in your life? And it might take a little while to build up the level of trust and confidence to get them to open up. But I don't just, like most young people, say, no, I'm fine. Sometimes I might ask, oh yeah, what does that mean? Tell me when you say fine, like what does that mean? Specific to this program that's happening. Here's some things that I'm noticing. I'm a little bit concerned about you, and I want to make sure that you're successful in this program. And I'd love to talk to you if you're willing to, open up about it. If there's a lack of trust, then it will be hard. If it's neutral, there's a chance that they'll come around. You might have to ask them, 2 or 3 times. If the trust is there, they'll probably, spill the beans, right on the spot. and sometimes it's worth employing, you know, I know they trust this person. Let me use them to, hey, I'd love for you to talk to so-and-so about this thing.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
In retrospect, Kaleth, could your life be a lot more easier if you learn how to delegate? And I'll give you an example. Ronald Reagan, like, alleged take a nap every afternoon, and he became most popular president, at least, by Republican Party, right? Could you do the same?
Would my life be easier if I learned how to delegate? I don't know. I don't know that I took on much of the actual stuff so much as the responsibility for the stuff. I delegated a lot when I was a chief, but I also felt like there are certain things that I need to be available for and available to. I think my life would have been easier if I was better at prioritizing, if I was better at saying no, which I wasn't good at. Right, the people want you here. All right, let's go. Especially because I had the resources to do all of this stuff. I didn't have a private plane, but I did have a small plane that was dedicated to me. So whenever I needed to go somewhere, I didn't have to drive to the airport and go through, you know, TSA or whatever. And it was on the same base that I lived on. So it was 5 minutes away from my doorstep. So it made it easy for me to say yes to too much stuff. If I had to do it over again, I would have created a framework, a system that said, hey, here are the priorities, and if things don't fall somewhere within the parameters of these priorities, then I'm gonna say no to them. But what I think happened is, you know, people start calling you enlisted Jesus. They start saying that you're the greatest thing ever, and then it became hard for me to say no. There's like tons of things that I probably should have not done or sent somebody else to do. That combined with I didn't like being in the Pentagon. There was a level of bureaucracy that's unknown to man in the Pentagon, and so anytime I got to like not go that way, I would choose to not the good decisions.
Not criticizing, but it's a kind of hubris, you know. Think that you.
It is. Yeah. Okay. That's a good critical analysis, I would say. Yeah.
So we have one more question here, and then I smell the food, so I feel like we need to gently transition out there. But thank you. Those are good nuggets. Please.
Hi there, I'm Hannah. I'm a second-year Master's of Public Health and Public Affairs student. Thank you for speaking with all of us today. I know we speak for many of us here. We will be entering our first position outside of an academic setting, and I'd love to hear what advice you wish you could tell your younger self as you entered into your first position.
So I typically answer this two ways. One is I wouldn't change anything. I like the way my life turned out. I made the mistakes that I made. They helped me become the man that I am today. So I don't like to go back and have do-overs. But I think if I did, you know, I would maybe tell myself to be patient, to be patient with people. You know, when I first started my leadership journey, I expected that, hey, I'm advocating for you, and I want you to go to school, and I want you to become the best version and be trained and whatnot. And if you didn't immediately jump onto my program, then I would write you off and say, you know what, you don't want to get better, so I'm not going to waste my time, you know, working with you. Mind you, I hadn't built up any credibility. I hadn't asked any questions. I would say this: be curious, be more curious, be less judgmental and more curious when it comes to your leadership opportunities. Ask a lot of questions. Try to understand. You know, we had a chief of staff, General Welsh. His tagline was, "Every airman has a story." In order for you to get the most out of them, you got to talk to them and ask questions and understand their story and their background. And, you know, not many people come into the military or the workforce or the college to intentionally do bad and fail and make mistakes and whatnot. Many times you probably have peers and you have students that have not done well at times, and it's probably because something is happening at home, something happened when they were a child, it's something else that they might be dealing with. So I would, be patient and be curious. And don't jump to conclusions too fast. Don't write people off too fast.
Not too fast.
Not too
Just
fast.
okay. Just making sure I'm taking notes. And I also heard a through line, which was also be humble.
Yeah.
I heard that in your talk and in this, the final gems you're giving us. Thank you so much for your time. It's the one resource we never get back, and you shared that with us, which I think is incredibly special. Thank you for your vulnerability, and thank you for everything you've done that may impact future generations to come. I am appreciative. I don't want to speak for everybody else. Thank you all for attending. Please stick around. We have, apparently, Kaleth has given us some Louis. You can get one on the way out. I'm kidding, okay? But we really appreciate you being here. And everyone, thank you for attending. Have a great evening.